Welcome to Eat Sleep Code, the official Telerik podcast. So we're going to talk about some news this week. A lot of it has to do with open source stuff. We got some other things sprinkled in. Might as well start off with a blog from our folks over at Telerik. It's that time to bring out the dead. I don't know if you remember the Monty Python, but it's time to bring out your Xamarin. And, people are usually like, it's not dead yet.
Yeah.
Well, it's not really. Like, it's moving into .NET MAUI now, and it's time to migrate over to .NET MAUI. So that's the first article we got. It's, kind of reading the writing on the wall. Microsoft said, May 1st, 2024, it's time to kick people off of Xamarin and get them over to MAUI. So that just means support will start ending for Xamarin. And the good news is I think Maui's in a pretty good place now where you can move things over fairly, relatively easy without having a lot of things break. Don't quote me on that. And if you do have a problem, you could always email me at sambasu@progress.com if you have any complaints. But
Maui, I think is interesting for a number of reasons. I think all it does is expose just how difficult the mobile cross-platform mobile space is, and getting it right across a framework is always going to be, I think, in many respects, impossible. Like, it is a monster of a challenge, and so kudos for keeping up the charge. But I think that for a lot of folks, Maui is still got its, at the edges, it still has some problems, which are well documented, obviously.
Yeah.
For myself, I mean, God bless those people who are working on it. They're doing God's work there, so to speak. So yeah, lots of work to be had for sure.
If you write your code the right way with some of this stuff, I mean, it may not be the best user experience if you run into something that's not supported by a platform, but at least it doesn't crash and burn. I've been experimenting with deploying these Maui apps to the Oculus, your favorite toy, John.
Sure.
And on the Quest 3, they actually run relatively well. And it, like I said, if you're trapping errors and whatnot, the worst case scenario is it says like feature not supported if you're trying to like grab the gyroscope off of a device that doesn't have one or something like that. So it's been entertaining, to say the least, to deploy to like odd devices like that. So I'm writing an article for a very special outlet to post, and hopefully that gets some people's interest in Maui and some other technologies that can go into the spatial computing space where you might not assume your apps can go. So I'll talk more about that at a later time. But in the meantime, migrate yourself to .NET MAUI. And we're going to move on to some open sourcey stuff. This is an article you posted, or not posted, but brought to my attention, John. This is how we do it, the Charm Guide to Building Popular Open Source Software.
Yeah. So I've been a long-time fan of Charm. Anyone who knows me knows that. I think these guys do great work. Charm is a company that builds a whole bunch of tools for supporting the command line. So, there's been a bit of a renaissance in the command line to try and bring it, back in some respects, but also to elevate what you can do in the command line. There's definitely a rise in the popularity of what are called TUIs, or terminal UIs. And I think a lot of us remember them back in the 80s, the sort of 80 character with, green on black, that sort of thing. But the command line now is way, way better. Anyways, these folks do a great job. And this is a blog post that celebrates basically the fact that they've hit 100,000 stars on GitHub, talks a lot about what they do around the developer community, how they promote their libraries. If you're at all interested, you can check them out at charm.sh. They have a bunch of libraries. Admittedly, they're all in Go. So if you're not targeting Go, you're going to have some challenges. But they are certainly pushing the state of the art forward. And I would argue strongly that if you are looking to build a CLI or anything around the command line, you owe it to yourself to look at Charm. We actually utilize some of their libraries for our own CLI at Octopus Deploy. We're huge fans, and we rebuilt our CLI in Go for a number of reasons. Go is a great language for building a CLI. I would argue there's some great libraries there, and it's the biggest advantage is the fact that it's fast and it's heavily cross-platform. So the command line tools, the compiler tools, which are based around C and C++, are fantastic. Your binaries are super small and they're cross-plat. Again, here we're talking about cross-plat again. This is a better story as opposed to Maui, but the folks over at Charm do a great job, and so this is a blog post that celebrates that. Yeah, I've been a long
Very
time.
old school, like you said. Like it reminds
Yes.
me a bit of that. What is that thing called? That retro movie that came out that I
War games.
no, but I based some of my show animations and stuff off of it. What is that thing called with Hacker Man and all of that?
Yeah.
Here, you get the idea. It's that old school command line interface type stuff.
Yep.
Which you don't really get that with anything like .NET or anything like that. So
There are libraries on the .NET side, I admit. There's actually a really nice library in Python. Yeah, there is. There's a few in .NET. There's actually a really nice library in Python. So I would recommend if you're looking at a language to pick for a CLI, start with Go. I think Go is a great one. C# not bad, but definitely Python is certainly a close contender, I would say. What you're showing here are all the libraries and all the applications that have been built on some of these libraries. So they're all cleverly named. They got names like Gloss and Bubble Tea and things like that. And it's really kind of having fun with the command line again. So strongly recommend checking these guys out.
gotta have the Sudoku CLI.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, why not, right?
Yep.
Oh man, I remember building stuff like that when I was growing up, like trying to make my MS DOS the nicest in town.
Sure.
But yeah, that was a short hobby because Windows 3.1 came around and ruined it all. But speaking of ruining it all, John, did you hear about Redis? So apparently Redis is taking their code off open source. And that's what this article is about. It's kind of a rant more than an article. Software vendor dumps open source and goes for the cash grab. So people are looking, some people in the community are looking down on Redis for taking their code and switching it over to a non-open source license. I'm not a lawyer, so I probably should have grabbed one that I know and brought him on the show to talk about exactly what this means. But for what I understand of it, you would have to fork the source code and then you continue to develop on the code that has been forked and make that private and not open source anymore. And then whatever's out there is out there, and it's it's not going to continue getting development unless somebody else picks up the ball and runs with it, which is tough for an open source project if there's a company behind a good portion of the code. So I guess there's some folks that are upset in the Linux community, and they're trying to drop support for it on certain versions of Linux, and it's kind of a sore spot for a lot of people. And the article mentions like HashiCorp did this with Terraform a couple years ago or last year.
Yep. They had the response to that was a project called Open Tofu. So HashiCorp but changed its license associated with Terraform and other tools. And the gist of it was that if you are leveraging Terraform within another tool, and it's proprietary and not open source, etc., you're fine. However, if you're using it as the basis for, I think, other tools and such, then you may have to pay a licensing fee, whatever. It actually had a huge impact on what people were using on that end. So a lot of folks actually jumped over to Open Tofu as a result. This is a tale as old. This is tale as old as time. I mean, this is somewhat analogous to, hey, during COVID, everyone was like, yeah, work from home, it's all good, everything. And then like a couple of years later, I was like, come on back to the office, and like you must come back to the office now. It's like, all right, so it's the old
Yeah.
bait and switch, I guess. But in the case of Redis, I don't know enough about this, so I'll refrain from speaking about it. But it's not the first
Yeah.
time I think that something like this has happened.
Like I'll give my take on like all of this though. I think it's weird as humans that we decide who it's okay that the money goes to, because people are making money off of these things regardless of whose hands it's in and open source it's part of. And like he even says in the article here, you know, like Amazon Web Services is making money hand over fist off Redis, but it's not okay for Redis to make money off Redis. You know what I mean? Like there's all these nuances to like how this stuff gets used, and like the end user ends up paying for something, but they're passing that cost on to their customers, and somebody's making money in the middle somewhere. You know what I mean? It's like everybody gets upset at who makes the money and where they make the money, even though there's money changing hands all over the place with this stuff.
All right.
I know it's probably a hot take, but I mean, come on. Like, this isn't the first time it'll happen, the last time it'll happen, but there's people, Amazon's just one service, a cloud provider that uses this stuff and sells that software as a service to other people, and man in the middle making money off this open source thing. But when the company that puts it out is like, we're going to make money off it, everybody's like, wait a minute. Wait a minute now.
Well, they are in their right to do so, given the fact that they're actually standing up servers and providing infrastructure and providing it as a cost, or sorry, as
Hmm.
a service via cost for them. So I have no problem with that. Are you saying life's not fair, Ed? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying people have a strong opinion on who makes the money and where they make the
Yeah,
money.
whatever. I mean, you have choice. I mean,
Yeah.
you can host it yourself. Go for it.
And then somebody in chat got the movie right. It's Kung Fury. I couldn't remember the name of because I'm an old timer now and I forget things.
That's all right.
On to more open sourcey stuff. I think we got two articles here actually. So Ubuntu 24.04 was getting ready to be released, and then there was a malicious code exploit with XZ utilities that were affected, and other Linux distros affected. So they pulled it back. They said April 11th they'll release it now. So they discovered the exploit. They're waiting on a patch before they release it out, and then released a security notice on other things that may be affected by this. And with that, you brought to my attention another article about the actual attack that brought this release to a halt.
Yeah.
So the XZ attack shell script. What is this whole thing about, John?
So this is the chronological sort of historical replay of what happened. So an engineer at Microsoft by the name of Andres, I can't pronounce it correctly, I'm sorry, discovered the fact that there was a library, a compression. So let's back up. So XZ is a set of utilities that provide compression. So an example of a compression library would be something like zip, right? A zip archive is a compression library, or a compression. It's a combination of things. Now I'm getting into myself into trouble here. So zip, tarball, things like this. These are compression algorithms and libraries and tools that basically provide you better, more economy and more efficiency when persisting bits, whether they're on the wire or on disk, whatever. XZ provides a set of compression libraries, and so this library called XZ, which was used quite a bit around a number of other libraries, was being used by a number of applications. And this engineer from Microsoft discovered the fact that he was, quote, observing a few odd symptoms around this library, and actually did all what any good developer would do, rather than just chalking it up to maybe network or whatever. He went about and cracked open some debugger tools and timing tools and figured out the fact that yes, indeed, this is taking far more CPU and far more time than it should. And as a result, discovered that there's actually a set of malicious code inside of this library. So there's
Hmm.
in particular, there's an object file, which is like a binary, and a shell script to call into that. And so this article here, basically chronological sort of breakdown of what it is, how it works, and when it became a part of this library. And so if you're all interested, this is relatively new. It's actually being talked about quite a bit on Twitter. And I think the general question is, we have all these libraries that are out there, and we just pick them up as developers and say, this looks good. It's kind of like just shopping in a grocery store and just
Hmm.
taking a box of cereal, not knowing where it's coming from, and just being like, yeah, this I'll eat this, and not realizing that it's actually might be something that may not be good for you, for example. So there's a whole sort of debate ongoing now about yet another example of a library gone haywire or that's been compromised, that's now buried inside of everything. This speaks to the importance of SBOMs. This speaks to the importance of trust but verify. All these sorts of things. And so, yeah, just an interesting sort of chronological take on what happened, how it works, etc. So, I thought I'd mention it here.
It looks like this happened in the open source space as well. Like this was happening in a public repo where somebody had committed this source code that was
Yeah.
nefarious.
Yeah, I think SolarWinds is reminiscent of this as well. There's tons of classic examples where
Hmm.
you get these sort of they're the kind of sort of like man in the middle, but not really. They're injecting malicious code as a result. It's sort of like a Trojan horse in a sense, right? You inject malicious code in this library that gets then picked up and integrated into an application, and then it can watch,
Yeah.
basically the data that's floating around in your application, and then will presumably call home.
Yeah, it says it was added as test inputs for some new tests is what the commit said.
There you
It's
go.
very strange.
Mm.
Interesting stuff.
Yeah,
Uh On to some more. I think this is open source as well. What
it
isn't
is.
these days? Uh Besides Redis. Haha. Nice callback. All right. Bun 1.1 was released. What's going on with Bun, John?
So Bun, we've talked about it before on this show. It's a JavaScript runtime. It's touted as being super fast and super secure, and is compliant with Node, and sort of can seen as be a replacement for npm. Well, it's compatible with npm, etc. So lots of goodness around this. Well, Bun 1.1 is now available. 1.1.1 actually technically is available, and it's now available for Windows. So they've done a lot of work to try and make this compatible with Windows 10. And the good news is that after tons of commits and tons of hard work and lots of late nights, it is now running on Windows, which is great. They're seeing a 98% pass rate for their test suite for Windows. And so that's awesome. You install it via a shell script, via PowerShell or whatnot, and you can get some Bun action running on Windows. There's some other things that they've added to 1.1. They've talked about some of the improvements that they've made, for example, around performance, etc. But if you're a Windows user and you're curious about getting onto the Bun train, sorry, I'm trying to use as many analogies or puns if I can.
Bun puns?
Yeah, Bun puns. There you go. Then you can certainly use this on Windows now, and so 1.1 is now available for you to take advantage.
The speed increases here look pretty fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
80 milliseconds. This is on Windows. 80 milliseconds. Same
Right.
on NPM. 11 times slower at 925 milliseconds. That is one of the reasons one of many that I'm not a big fan of NPM. I know everybody cringes when I say that in the JavaScript world, but
Okay.
it's a necessary evil in that space, and I've never been a fan of NPM. It's always gotten in my way more than it's helped, in my opinion. But that's
I
just
think
me.
most people hate. I think there's two things about npm that people hate. I think people like the delivery model, like just reach up and grab anything you want. But I think more than anything, people hate package.json like with a passion. And
Yeah,
then secondly is just how big your node modules folder gets after you use npm too much. Now we
exactly.
switched, yeah, we use pnpm quite a bit at Octopus. We like it a lot. Um, I haven't used Yarn in years, to be honest. Yarn always seemed a little bit esoteric to me. It was very much tailored towards the web dev space for a long time. So a lot of node developers weren't using it, for good reason. npm is definitely the package manager of choice. But that's another option. But Bun is certainly up there. So go for it.
Yeah, I feel like I've been given a foot gun with npm as well. I've done a lot of things that were just stupid on my own regard,
Sure.
like never npm install into a cloud backed folder
Yep.
like a OneDrive folder,
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. That's always
because
fun.
it literally like brought my whole system to a screeching halt
Sure.
instantly. And
Yep.
it was totally by accident, but it started to sync the millions and millions of, 1 kilobyte files that the thing
Yeah.
pulls in.
Yeah.
And that is not a good model for the Windows file system. It choked so hard and tried to replicate that up to OneDrive. And I literally had to like reboot in safe mode to get out of that scenario. So yeah, don't do that. Don't do stupid things.
Noted.
All right. We've been talking about AI a lot. Who hasn't been? It's
Mm.
um, it's all over the news. It's the kids are talking about it at school. They're getting in trouble for their homework being AI generated. And I did a live stream about AI last week, and it seems like Oculus is, or Octopus is. Sorry about that, John.
That's okay.
I know that that's probably a trigger for you.
Yeah, that's right.
Octopus AI experiment. What are you guys doing with large language models, John?
Yeah, we're just playing around. So Matt, this is a blog post by Matt Casperson, who's a colleague, and we've been having some fun playing around with LLMs. And the intent here is to try and see how we can leverage an LLM to hoist up some of the data that we have around our APIs, around CVEs, etc., so that you have a natural language query interface to a lot of technical stuff that you would normally have to just hunt and try and find. So we're doing this for a limited time. We're just playing around with it. But basically, this is a plugin that we have for Chrome. And what this does is it basically allows you to query a lot of octopus isms. So, some examples that Matt lists in his article are like, list the vulnerabilities that have been reported in the deployment logs as a table. Some other examples are things like, how do I go about listing variables for steps, or how can I, query automatically an endpoint that we expose? Because everything is API first in Octopus. How can we query an endpoint and get a result set back, for example? So
Mm-hmm.
these and other types of scenarios we're trying to play around with. Now, there's a lot of work to be done here to make it reasonably good. So this is what we classify as prompt engineering. So there's two aspects to it. First of all, you have to have the repository of stuff, the LLM itself, the model to query. But then you have to have the right types of prompts that you want users to enter. Now, if in the case of Matt, he's writing prompts that will align well to our model. If you're a general user and you don't know much about what you're looking for, then sometimes some of the answers you may get back may not be all that congruent for what you're looking for. It's a sort of classic AI problem. Do what I mean, not
Mm-hmm.
what I say. That's always going to be the problem with AI. So AI is classically known as like taking a really long time and then coming back with the wrong answer. And so this is no different than the neural networks, LLMs that we're dealing with today. But it is interesting. So we wrote a blog post about this, and yeah, thought I'd mention it here.
Yeah, I think there's some good plays that can be made off of stuff like this, whether it's logging or digging through your own documentation.
Sure.
There's a bunch of different avenues. I think we're going to see AI be useful. And the presentation I was giving the other day was, it's there to augment what we're doing, not replace what we're doing. People keep looking for this, drop-in replacement for, let's get rid of, hundreds of people on staff and just run this AI thing instead. and instead it's just going to make people more productive with the
Yep.
tools they already have.
hundred
And
percent
that's
agree.
more the reality of it.
Yep, 100% agree. So doctors are using AI, technology people like ourselves are using AI. I actually had a chat with a gentleman when speaking of when, coming full circle, I was talking about how I came back from Paris. I actually spoke to a gentleman who was in the IT space. This was my Uber to Charles de Gaulle Airport. And we got chatting about the fact that he was using AI, unbeknownst to his employer, but he was using to help him because he's a tech support, and
Hmm.
he was using it to be more efficient, basically. And so he's like the number one person they have at their company now because he's able to troubleshoot problems like instantaneously. Almost, they're like, "How are you so good at this?"
Wow.
He's like, "Well, kind of like dusting off his knuckles and blowing, sort of thing." But he's using AI very effectively to help him get started with figuring out what the problem may lie, for example. And anywhere and everywhere. I think you owe it to yourself to look at how you can better efficiencies within your organizations using AI. So anywhere from Photoshop uses AI, and I know that companies like Chick-fil-A are looking at AI, for example. So I recently watched a YouTube video yesterday about how Chick-fil-A deploys to all its stores around North America, and they
Hmm.
use Kubernetes and such. And they recently talked about how they're looking at AI to determine, you know, we've got to do a visual inspection of what chicken's on the grill, and they have a camera pointing down to try and help make more efficiencies, things like. So it's just bonkers where AI is being used. But like you said, it's ancillary. It's not meant to
Hmm.
replace, and I think it'd be a mistake to do so.
Yeah. I've been using it a lot in writing. I think, people are assuming as an author, you're just going to like automatically generate articles or whatever.
Yeah.
Not the
Students
case.
are doing that.
Um,
Grade 8 students are doing that. They're even including the prompt when they copy and paste
I
their answer.
saw, I saw that before. I've seen it where it comes back and it's like, what? This is not in my knowledge base because I haven't looked into anything past 2021 or whatever the
Right.
generic message is, and people have put that down as an answer.
Sure.
It's like, yeah, you got to know where the actual information is and stuff. But one of the features that I actually like quite a bit is, you write something, you read it, and you're like, I just don't really like the way this flows, and you can just
Yep.
paste that back into
Yep.
the tool and say rephrase this,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it will give you a different wording of that same paragraph or sentence, and that's like something that's super helpful.
Something that
So,
I've been using is the ChatGPT app on my iPhone, and the nice thing about it is it's got a text to speech capability, so you can actually talk to it, and it will
mhm.
submit that to ChatGPT, which is nice, and then it will generate the response and then read it out to you. And I found that really useful when doing gardening or something like that, and I wanted to discuss something with ChatGPT, like, oh, tell me about the French Revolution, or what's the latest news from Microsoft, or things like that.
Yeah, generate a podcast on the fly. There you
Sure.
go.
Yeah.
Um, So let's jump over to some developer tool stuff. We've got Visual Studio Code updates. It's quite a
Yes.
bit here actually for March. I was reading through some of this, and there's several like this is the all the headings on the right hand side for this article. There's accessibility, workbench, jump to comment or reply, editor, source control, terminal testing, languages, notebooks, remote development. I mean, this is a huge update.
Yeah, the biggest one for me, and it's not listed here, but it's casually mentioned, but some folks may have missed this. But now what you can do is you can actually take tabs from Visual Studio Code, drag and drop them into the desktop, and you'll get
Mm-hmm.
now multiple windows. So Visual Studio Code now has multi or floating windows support, multi-window support. So it's now a MUI. And they mentioned it here in the context of custom editor support in floating windows. So this was a feature that was added earlier, and I found out about this through Burke Holland on his TikTok. So I followed the VS Code TikTok, and Burke Holland wrote a quick little, published a quick little video about how the VS Code now supports floating windows. So that was the biggest
Yeah.
one for me. But yeah, 1.88 style available. This is quoted the March 2024 release. Tons of new features in here, mostly minor stuff, just iterative improvements, but yeah, the floating windows one was a huge one for me.
Yeah, this is actually probably a big technical hurdle that they overcame
Oh, sure.
to make this happen
Yeah, yeah.
because it's an Electron app,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't think it has, I'm not a big Electron developer, so I don't know Electron that well. I don't think it has a multi-window support built in.
Well, you have to write it a certain way. The biggest issue for me would be if I was looking at doing that is now I have to do because it does it via message passing.
Hmm.
So all your calls now have to be serialized. I think they do it via WebSockets.
Yeah, and then you've
And then
got the tab interface too that you're
yeah,
dragging out.
yeah, that's right.
Like this is
So
a whole different ball of wax
it is
than just like, oh, I'm just going to add another window to like old school like Windows type programming.
right.
Um, this is really nice. And then some of the stuff up in here is nice too, like the locked scrolling. Like this is like super useful. I don't know how many times I've had to go through and like work on two files at one time. So you can lock those and to scroll together. Um, there's that one.
I'm hearing all the Vim and Emacs users screaming at
Like,
their
we've had this for
laptops now.
years.
I know.
It's like Android and Apple phones. It's like all the Android people like we've had this for centuries.
Yeah, sure. Come at me, bro.
Let's
It's been
see.
my favorite editor for years. You're not if from my cold dead hands. You'll have to pull out code. Now I know that Vim is, for folks who are able to drive it through a keyboard. The purpose is you never want to move your hands from the keyboard to the mouse. That's its touted feature, but you can get Vim key bindings for code if you want. I just like code. I like the way it works. It's sort of like Goldilocks, not too hot, not too cold, just right. I like it. So yeah, it's
You
gonna
want
take a
to
monumental effort to get it out of me.
you want to really trigger some folks. Here's an update for the mini map section. It will now
Hey, there you go.
recognize region.
Yeah,
So you get these,
circa
bookmarks in the
2005. Yeah, this is hot.
so use regions, everybody. Use lots of regions. Make one single file, all the code, use regions, so you can
Collapse it
jump
all.
to line, 1000 without, skip it a beat. Don't
Sure.
break those up into different files or libraries or anything. Just use one gigantic file.
Yeah,
Everything in it.
Yeah, mono. I heard mono repos are hot. Why don't we have the mono file? So your entire program in one file. There you go.
Been there, done that. Got the t-shirt refactored.
Sure.
All right. So this is a nice little handy post. Not so much with coding or anything, just kind of a friendly here's how I blog type of post by a good friend of ours here at Progress, Joseph Guadagno. And he was just he does a lot of speaking and stuff. He's a Microsoft MVP. So he was talking about one of our fellow MVPs looking at his blog and saying, I really wish I could do that thing where you're embedding your slides into your web pages. And so he wrote a blog post on how he does this, and it's actually really intuitive. So apparently this is something that OneDrive combined with PowerPoint can do. And you can go into your OneDrive and click on a PowerPoint file, and you will get an embed context menu. And you click on embed, and it spits out a little piece of code. You drop that into your website, and you're good to go. And then he talks about
I was just gonna say it's
it.
just an iframe, dude.
Yeah.
They're all iframes. This is how we do it.
Yeah. But
So.
this is something built into OneDrive, I guess, that people don't really know much about.
Ooh.
So he's got a little script inside of his Jekyll page that goes
Fair
through
enough.
and kind of spits this all out for him,
Yeah.
and makes it even easier. So he drops the PowerPoint URL in the front matter, and it generates like the stuff right out of the box.
Yep.
So that's pretty neat. I thought it was cool, and
Nice.
us presenters sharing information like that is always
When in
helpful
doubt,
to each other.
when in doubt, use iframes. So
Speaking of iframes, John, I picked this article for you and me. This was called "I'm So Old: The Web Edition." I just thought it was funny. It's just kind of a silly list of like I'm so old that Like rounded corners were made with graphics. Bitmaps were a viable image format.
Nice.
Let's see.
Social media was
People,
called a guest
yeah.
book.
Web page layouts were done with table.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. You say that to people that are younger and into web stuff, and they're like, "What? Why would you do
Yes.
that?" Because that was the only thing
Why
we
wouldn't
had.
you? It
Like
was
that's
awesome. Yeah.
it's all we had. It's the only layout mechanism we had.
Yep.
Yeah. Use a
Lots of
table, use an
TRs and
inline
TDs.
style to clear all the styles off of it, and you're good to go.
Sure. Yep.
Let's see. There's a bunch of fun ones in here. I just thought we could have an old man rant.
Does it mention anything about under construction? There's got to be an under construction GIF
Oh
somewhere.
yeah, you gotta have. They do mention the guest book and the web ring, so those are also good ones.
So the greatest under construction page that I've ever seen, there's this one that actually has, it's kind of like the archive of internet, the archive of under construction GIFs, and it's at a website. I'm just going to send it to you in the chat here, and if you want, I dare you to, but feel free to send this to the stream here. But I'll just put it in the private chat here, and then Ed, you can choose whether or not you want to display it. But basically, every GIF conceivable ever made around under construction is listed on this page, and it's at textfiles.com/under construction. So
Yeah, I'm waiting for it to load.
Yeah, it takes a while, dude. Like it's pretty impressive though what's there. So I think this page is under construction. And if you scroll down, it will just keep loading all of them. There's just so many under construction GIFs. But this to me symbolizes the 90s internet for me. This was all that was available. So
the graphic probably could go away, but the concept of an under construction page is actually something that can come in useful every now and then.
Okay.
So I actually had this come up as a useful item when I was doing some client work, where they had a website that was built in, I believe it was like WordPress or something. And this isn't a knock on WordPress, because if you do not maintain your WordPress site, it will eventually get out of update and get attacked and taken over by bots and garbage. And that is what happened. And this was a business. And like you would go to their website and it was totally hijacked, right? And they're like, we need a new website built. Like, we lost control of this. Like, we don't have a website anymore. The person that coded this is gone. And I'm like, well, your SEO is just getting tanked right now. So let's throw up an under construction page and get this off of your domain like ASAP.
Yeah.
So
the other option is just to go to the Wayback Machine, grab a snapshot off that.
This was like a data-driven, like,
oh, I see,
product purchasing type of thing.
Yep.
Like a store. So yeah, it was all bad news. So it was like the best thing to do right now is just shut this down, save what little SEO we can.
Yeah, every price listed on every item is call us for a price, sort of thing, because we can't handle any orders.
Yeah, it was bad. It was the best of a bad situation. And then speaking of best of it, well, there's no best of this situation. I had to trigger you with this, John. This is a
bring it on.
Let's get John riled up before we go. End of the show post, and it's appropriately titled "We Live in Hell." The update.
Sure.
Somebody was caught
of course.
Driving a Cybertruck.
Yes.
While using the Apple Vision Pro.
Yeah, why not?
So I just thought I'd share that with you, John, because I know how much you like technology.
I don't mind the Cybertruck. I don't mind the Cybertruck so much. I do have some concerns about the automated driving, but the whole Apple headset thing, it doesn't have to be Apple. It could be an Oculus, whatever. That to no end makes me batty. So
I love how they went through the effort to update the article to respond that U.S. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg says to remind Americans that this is a bad idea.
Yep.
while also spreading the video even further.
Sure. Sure.
So yeah, I thought that was fun.
It's a classic example of Silicon Valley solving problems you didn't know even existed.
Yeah.
So,
Take care, folks. We'll
all right.
talk to you next week. Bye bye.